Welcome to the pod presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. Gentlemen, we're a big one this week. Ohio State at Penn State. Unfortunately, big noon. Game should be at night. White out. It's the gods intended.
I don't know. If you want to try to get out of State College Saturday, I'm fine with a noon kickoff.
Yeah, there is that. Not easy to
there
get
I am rooting for me. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you. Just feels like a whiteout, though, but it isn't. It's big noon. We got Ryan Day. We got James Franklin. Two coaches trying to prove they can win the big one. Which is kind of unfair to Ryan Day since he wins this one every year.
Yeah.
Feel like Ryan Day wins on Saturday, and they'll just be like, yeah, well, that's because James Franklin can't win a big one. Where if James Franklin wins, everyone will be like, you finally won the big one, and Ryan Day will be walking back to Columbus. Pat, who's got more pressure? Which coach has more pressure?
Oh, boy. I think James Franklin still does until he does it, you know. Although, if Ryan Day loses twice in their first, 9 games with a team that was supposed to win the national championship, that's pretty significant. But James Franklin is at the point of being Charlie Brown and Ryan Day's Lucy pulling the ball out of the way. And he keeps thinking, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the time. I'm going to kick the ball. And Lucy keeps yanking the ball, and Penn State keeps losing. Between Urban Meyer and Ryan Day, they've won 11 out of 12. And the only one Penn State won in that time, they blocked the field goal and ran it back for a winning touchdown. So they have not been able to get over on the Buckeyes in a long time. It's in Happy Valley. Penn State has a good team, a balanced team, a lot of good things going for them. We'll see about Drew Aller's health at quarterback. But, man, the defense is very good. The offense has playmakers. The offense has creativity. I don't know whether they're as good as Ohio State, but it really, if you're a Penn State fan, you've just got to be, going in with some hope but some resignation, yeah, they're probably going to beat us again.
Yeah, I kind of think Day has more pressure only because, as Pat mentioned, the preseason expectation level on the team as far as the NIL stuff and the $20 million roster and the 3 losses to Michigan and the no championships in his 6 years. It also seems like every game that Ohio State plays is win or he's fired, it's weird. It just has that feeling this year. And he already lost one. You just get that vibe. Not that that's going to happen, but it just kind of how it feels. It just feels like every time they go out there, and the pressure they seem to understand that. I think we talked about kind of his sideline demeanor, right, in the Nebraska game, and it's like do or die. It's like every play, every game, every snap seems to be that. In this game especially, because I think Ohio State could still get in the playoff despite having 2 losses, but to lose 2 this early, make it tough.
Ohio State can get in the playoff at 10-2. That would give them one good win over Indiana. We'll see what Iowa ends up, but there isn't anything else. They had a terrible non-conference schedule. And the schedule is not breaking big, and Michigan's looking at a 6-6 season. So, where's your good wins? They got Purdue after this, Northwestern, Indiana is the big one, and then Michigan. And it's hysterical that we're saying Indiana's the big one and then Michigan, but that's
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Indiana's 8-0. It's won every game by 14 points at least, and hasn't trailed.
Yeah.
That's what Ohio State was supposed to be.
Exactly.
But all this pressure, they lost by 1 at Oregon, number 1 team in the country. But they don't look like they're supposed to look. They didn't look like they're supposed to look against Nebraska. And They average 2.1 yards a rush. Like, what is going on? This offensive line is not great, and it's injured. They got injuries.
And they lost a player or two, yeah.
So there's a significant bit where you say, all right, is this where Penn State's defensive line can make a move? There's a potential advantage for Penn. I don't think you go into too many games with Ohio State unless you're Georgia, maybe Michigan last year, but where you go in and go, well, we got an advantage, a talent advantage somewhere. But Penn State might on this. Besides the playoff chase, though, but you get in as a 10 or an 11 seed. That's not really what everyone was looking at. I think what the Buckeye fans are looking at and saying, this isn't what this is not a dominant team. I would say it's still October. Doesn't really matter. You'll forget about all this. But Saturday is a day to prove it. And I don't know who's got more pressure, but there's a lot of pressure on both these coaches.
There is. And, I think that, as you mentioned, the warning sign for Ohio State was to come out of the loss to Oregon, which is not a bad loss. It was a hell of a game. Ross and I were there. It was a great game. Have a week off, though, to marinate in that loss and then come out and really flail against Nebraska. That's not what I expected at all. It's kind of like when Alabama came out of the loss to Vanderbilt and flailed against South Carolina. And you just wonder what isn't working right there. And you mentioned, Dan, obviously the running game, the offensive line. There's the obvious issue. And maybe we're a little too demanding to think that they should be able to plug in other players there and still be good. But they did spend $20 million reportedly, allegedly, on the roster. And you would hope you'd have some quality depth at a place like Ohio State and be able to steamroll a not great Nebraska team at home. So they come in a little wobbly into State College here. And, we'll see what Zane Durant and Abdul Carter can do against the offensive line in terms of disrupting the line of scrimmage there and putting some heat on Will Howard.
Yeah, and we talk about pressure on the coaches, but the quarterbacks are, Will Howard came to Ohio State to lead them to a championship, part of this huge transfer portal haul. And there's pressure on these quarterbacks. Drew Aller, obviously, second season has looked really good, and he's kind of been built up as the guy to, finally lead Penn State into the playoffs and under this kind of newfangled offense they got. So pressure on the QBs too to move the ball. You would think it would be a low scoring kind of game. These have somewhat been that in the past, although I don't know, when you look at the scores, they're a little higher scoring than you would think. But last year was pretty low scoring, and you would think just kind of how this sets up, this might be the same.
Last year they couldn't complete
20-12 last year.
I was there. I watched.
We were Dan and I were sitting next to each other, both saying, like, why did we come?
Yeah.
that was a rough game.
It was rough. Drew
Aller, from Ohio. Will Howard is from Pennsylvania. Was not recruited by Penn State. And he said this week, I cannot wait. It's going to be a homecoming for me. I grew up a Penn State fan. I wanted to go there my whole life. They didn't think I was good enough. I guess we'll see next week if I was. I cannot recall an Ohio State player ever saying someone didn't recruit me. It's been a while. Been a minute. Plucky underdog Buckeye. I mean, normally it's like, I was thinking about them, but I ended up choosing Ohio State.
Yeah.
In fairness to James Franklin, Will Howard from Downingtown, PA. A lot of good players from there. He went to K-State. The other offers were Kansas, Maryland, Minnesota, and Rutgers. Those were his high majors. So it wasn't like Ohio State walked in and offered a kid that Penn State didn't. But there is a little bit of that. Bo Pribula came in for Penn State the other day. He's a dual threat guy, and there was a good spark but when he was in the game. And I wonder if if I think they're going to enjoy making Ohio State plan for both. Two different types of quarterbacks, but I'm not sure you really take a step back with Pribula.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but my thought watching Pribula was that he danced with fire a little bit in terms of throwing some balls into tight areas, and the Ohio State secondary is awfully good. And if he throws those same passes, they may be interceptions. But he's got a lot of confidence and a lot of athleticism, and you're absolutely right when you say that the differences between he and Aller are enough that the preparation, I think you have to do a lot of work saying, okay, this is what they're going to look like with him, with Aller, and without Aller.
Yeah, I'm sure James Franklin's going to take it up to the last minute. We saw Monday in his news conference, he kind of left it out there that there's some question whether Aller will be healthy enough to play, and said things like we need both quarterbacks, and I'm sure we'll take it up to as far as he can go to decide, make any kind of announcement, or maybe they probably won't make any announcement at all, and continue to play the game. Any advantage, right? Any advantage.
Is the Big Ten? They don't have an mandatory availability report, do they?
I think they do.
Do they? I can't remember who has it and who doesn't.
I thought the SEC did.
SEC definitely does. This is the first year of it, but I thought the Big Ten's been having something. I just don't know what their policies are exactly.
Yeah,
questionable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe any of the policies.
Game time decision.
Game time decision. Yeah, I don't know that I believe any of the availability reports. Really,
I've been listed questionable my entire life. Doubtful mostly. Many times questionable.
You've come through though. Really, you've exceeded expectation. Dan.
Well,
you beat the spread.
I may have exceeded
Week
expectations.
to week, yeah.
But I wouldn't say I've come far. Low expectations, everyone's best friend.
That's right.
I don't know. It's just going to be fraught. I feel like it's going to be close.
Yeah.
And I think Penn State, if they can run the ball, is going to have a real chance here. I don't know. But you kind of waiting and say, all right, well, if Ohio State plays its game, they can hit a higher level. But are they going to play their game? That I do not know. James Franklin this week also, we dinged him last week for his walking away, the press conference that was where they discussed the felony charges of sexual assault against a couple of players that were dismissed last summer. He just walked away. So we'll give him fair point. He apologized for walking away. Said, first thing I'd like to say is I want to apologize. I didn't do a great job of handling Wednesday. Difficult situation. I've got to own that I did not do a good job of that. I understand you guys have a job to do and you got to ask these questions, and I respect that. University put out a statement, and reality is I think there's not a whole lot more I can say other than that statement. It's an ongoing legal situation. It's challenging. It's challenging on everybody, and so on. So good for him. I agree. I don't know what we're going to get any answer, but you can't just tell the press, sorry, something bad's happened here. You can't ask about it. Please ask about our punting average. They got to ask. This is real news. It's real people and real things. And so if your answer is, look, I don't know, I'm not involved, that's fine. But you can't walk away and demand. And then when you do that, there is vitriol from a segment of a fan base that will always defend you.
Yeah.
That goes after a reporter that is doing not just their job, but a job that anybody should want done, which is at least asking powerful people about important subjects. So,
yeah.
Well, it was so easy. It was so easy to be handled, right? Just can't comment, refer back to the statement. I'm sorry. That's all that had to be done. And I don't know why he couldn't do that. I mean, coaches do that all the time. So it was very weird the way it was handled with the spokesperson doing that and then James Franklin stepping off the podium. But you know what? He apologized, and I'm surprised in a lot of ways because you don't often see coaches do that, actually. So at least he did do that, and probably because I think for the most part, even people close to James Franklin and involved at Penn State probably thought that wasn't handled properly, and probably let him know that.
Yeah. I mean, he's smart and he's aware, and I'm sure once you watch the video of the optics of that, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Did we really just create that situation? I mean, that was so stupid.
But I respect that he did that, So
yeah.
Yep. At least he apologized for it, or acknowledged it or whatever. So anyway, huge game on Saturday there, with just a lot of backdrop and drama. I'm not sure what's going to happen. We'll talk more of the X's and O's of it on Thursday's show, and we'll make a pick. Spread was 3.5. Ohio State giving 3.5, which was interesting because maybe it was expecting a little lower, a little tighter.
I was expecting lower too. Yeah, I could think about it. I mean, you get 3 as the home team, sort of usually, right? So is Vegas saying that Ohio State's a touchdown better team than Penn State?
I mean, Ohio State kicks a field goal and wins the game, 2017 or whatever, and you're still covering. I don't know. I'm sure that there's some dive bars in Scranton where this is a big conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A few spots in Pennsylvania. Discussion around the Wawa.
I want to go to a dive bar in Scranton.
It's pretty good.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. It sounds great.
What's the dive bar on The Office? It's in Scranton. My wife's actually been there because she actually went there because, Pennsylvania is a swing state. What? Poor Richards. She yelled at me through the door in the living room.
Okay, political reporter for the Hill.
She was covering Mike Pence in 2020 and during the campaign, and she went to.
All right.
This is great. We've got
anyway,
moving on. We got the great live studio audience. Live studio
audience. The great
audience.
chorus in the background.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah. Go on. Colorado got in the rankings, number 23, after Coach Prime asked the media not to rank them. Don't ask the media not to do something. They'll do it.
Yeah, that's right. We don't listen.
Unless it's like, something good, like, volunteer or something, or give to charity. We won't do that. But you say, don't rank. We don't even want to be ranked. Don't rank us, please. We don't like that. We'd rather be at the back in the dark, just chilling in the cut. We good, we cool, we straight. So don't feel pressure to rank us. Sorry, Prime, 23. Even when they're doing nice things for Colorado.
We'll show him. Put him in the rankings. Put him in the rankings.
Got to do it. All right. We'll be right back after this message. All right. It's time for some money moves presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. In this case, we have a story from last week where, Ross, you reported that in advance of the expected settlement of the House lawsuit, schools are already cutting promised roster spots and player positions from various so-called non-revenue sports. Thousands of them, really. And part of that is because there will be set roster limits now on a team, where before you might still only have 5 scholarships for, say, I don't know, what was the roster limit before on a volleyball team?
Well, like the example I used in the story was men's volleyball, which had 4.5 or something scholarships for a team, a team of an unlimited roster, right? So most of the gist with this is most of the NCAA sports did not have a roster limit. I mean, they could have an unlimited amount of players of the roster, whatever the school would allow. And so there was tons of walk-ons, right? Or tons of players with partial scholarships. And part of the settlement and I can get to why later, but part of the settlement implemented roster limits and allowed schools to scholarship every player up to that roster limit. So while there will be more than scholarships potentially, and there would be more scholarships, I think, given, there will be less roster spots because there will be roster limits now. So let's go back to the example. If before, most men's volleyball teams keep about 25 players or so on their roster for 4.5 scholarships. So 4.5 scholarships spread over 25 players. Now, there's no scholarship limit. It's just the roster limit is now 18. So you have to cut to 18. And you could scholarship all 18 if you want, but almost nobody's going to do that, right? But they might, a school might give 6 or 8, maybe even 10 scholarships instead of the 4.5 allowed. But the gist is, and that's just one example.
There's 7
pretty much
less
every
spots.
sport is similar, right? 7 to 10, maybe even some schools might have 30 on scholarship. And you can go through each sport is very similar. Cross country, I think, is now at 30 roster limit. Most cross country teams you talk to, they keep around 40 to 45 on the roster. Football, right? 105 is now the roster limit. Most college football teams have in between 120 and 130 on their roster. So it's about 20 to 30 walk-ons cut. A lot of these are walk-ons, but some of them do earn a partial scholarship. I talked to Dad today of a kid who has a 40% scholarship, and he's pretty sure that his son is going to be cut. And now, according to the NCAA rule, Dan, and also as part of the settlement, a player with a scholarship cannot have that scholarship ended. So their roster spot could be cut, but they still preserve the scholarship if they remain at the school. Now tell me how many players who are invested in their sport will stay at the school and not play their sport, right? They're going to want to play their sport. So they're going to give up that scholarship to leave and potentially go somewhere else if there's a spot. The problem is everybody pretty much in the major college level is having to do this, right? So there are going to be fewer spots everywhere. So in the end, Dan, if you add it all up, it's around 3,000 to 5,000 roster spots will be eliminated in among the power conferences, because those are the main ones that will be doing the settlement. And so that's kind of the gist of the story. I think another part, last thing I'll say here is lawyers in the House case, the plaintiffs, are working, they say, with the NCAA and the power conferences, to be more specific. The power conferences, I can say this 100 times, are the ones driving most of this. They are in control, not the NCAA. The power conferences are in control, especially of this. And the plaintiffs' lawyers are working with the power conferences as well as the NCAA to try to find a solution to this, which would include grandfathering those players who are already on a roster to remain and to keep that roster spot for at least maybe a set number of years, kind of a transition or a ramp up.
Yeah, as soon as they agreed to this is what was coming. And I guess some people had to see the rubber hit the road to fully grasp it. But here we are. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, but this is going to massively affect men's sports more than women, right? The men's
Yep.
cross country, gymnastics, wrestling, soccer, swimming, volleyball, etc., are where you're going to see the cuts, because the women's sports, for Title IX purposes, need to have enough representation. But, as soon as the House settlement started to verge on reality, we still are not formally officially there, but still as it verged on reality, this was the inevitable outcome to it. And yeah, I heard, several weeks ago that some men swimmers who had verbally committed to go to SEC schools were being told, don't bother, you can't come. You're go somewhere else, find something else. And swimming, like soccer, like volleyball, like some of these sports, the recruiting happens early, and all of a sudden you are left out. You're late in the cycle, and you're not going to get your spot. It's a tough, dirty situation. I hate it. I hate it for these people. My oldest son, who was at Missouri, his roster spot would have been gone as a swimmer there. Other two probably would have been okay, but that you are eliminating opportunities for a not small number of people. As Ross said, several thousand people. Maybe this is the way it has to be. We've debated and we've talked an awful lot on the podcast about football driving the bus. And so football, has to be protected, maybe necessary at the expense of other sports. But it's an ugly business when you're telling people who have worked for opportunities, have been recruited for those opportunities, oh, never mind, go away.
Yeah, this sucks. I mean, I'm not. There's no other way to put it. I mean, if you're recruited 2 years ago to go to a school, let's say it's Missouri, and you're a swimmer, and you're doing your thing, and you're swimming, and you're 2 years into your degree, you're getting an accounting degree or whatever, and swimming's a huge part of your life, but you're not a star, and not only is they looking at bringing in a freshman class, but as some of these point out, everything's going to trickle down. So I don't. Yeah. Missouri is not a power in swimming, right? It's good, but not
top 25 fringe. Yeah.
Okay. And what's in men's swimming? What's the top 5?
Top 5: Texas,
like UCLA,
California,
Texas. Okay.
No, not UCLA. They don't even have men's swimming.
Well, let's say Texas. Texas has to cut some of their guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Texas. So the Texas kids are going to go, and Missouri's going, well, we'll take that. We'll take 26 swimmer at Texas or 40. Right?
Yeah.
It's all going to roll downhill. It sucks. You didn't do anything wrong. You were promised something, and you lived up to your side of this bargain, and now you're getting left out. I think grandfathering is a very good idea. It's what they should do, because if it's not if you obviously you can stay, but you want to swim, you've built your whole life, you're a Division I good swimmer, SEC level swimmer, but you just wonder if you're okay. If we take other sports, and I may be getting it wrong, but you roll it downhill and then you say, okay, well, there's a guy who's swimming at Wichita State. You're running the Wichita State swim team, right? They have one. I apologies if they don't. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think they do. But
not
Missouri State. Missouri
Wichita,
State.
But
does.
Missouri State, like you just throw all your guys out and get a whole new team, because it's going to come rolling downhill.
Yeah.
The transfer portal for these sports are going to be crazy.
No, it is. It is. You're right.
Everyone's cutting players, and then you're like, well, these guys are, and swimming. It's not subjective.
This is one of the things I've heard from parents, Dan, is what's happening is schools in preparation, because this doesn't take effect until the House settlement is implemented and all the concepts of it are implemented, which is July 1. It's supposed to be July 1. But schools are getting ahead of this and doing it now, this fall, and they're cutting not just to their roster limit, they're cutting some of them well under the roster limit to save 2, 4, 6 spots to make room for players in the portal. And I have heard that directly from parents. Of all the sports, men's swimming specifically is at risk more than any other, from talking to people, administrators and parents and so on. Because men's swimming, one, has so many, right, people. Pat, I don't know what's a roster. I mean, I'm hearing anywhere from 35 to 45 players on a men's swimming roster.
Probably at least 30 and up to some go up to like 50. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There were some high, and ones from talking to parents and administrators, some of the high 40s, and you got to cut to 30 at least. And
lower than
as
that,
Pat said, because of Title IX. Yeah. Well, Correct. And I kind of wrote it in the story a little bit, but like conferences are having their own roster limits within the national roster limit standard. And the thought is that the SEC, the roster limit will be 22 instead of 30. Yep. And in the Big Ten, it'll be more like 25 or 26 instead of 30. So you're talking about cutting upwards of 20 players on some of these rosters. And there's like cutting going on for this roster limit situation, but there's also another cutting going on for another reason, which as Pat mentioned is the Title IX piece and which they're all woven together, the reallocation of Olympic sport resources, specifically scholarships, to reallocate up the chain and move them to football and men's basketball and baseball. So you're not actually adding extra men's scholarships. Because if you do that, you obviously have to add more women's scholarships as well to match that for Title IX purposes. So instead of doing that, there's reallocating of scholarships going on too. So there's these two things happening, and it's not just impacting players. We're talking a lot about the athletes who are on existing rosters. It's really impacting recruits and prospects, some who have been committed for months, if not over a year, to schools. A lot of these Olympic sports recruit 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And so there's a lot of long-time commitments here who these players got a call in the last month or so, 2 months before signing day, by the way, saying your spot no longer exists. And I think that's been really hard for emotionally traumatic, distressing for a lot of athletes. But
that's going to get worse. That's going to get worse.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, look, if you got a soccer team and you're going in going into someone's senior year, and you can get a better player who's a junior, or you can take this recruit. I mean, as a coach, you're getting paid to win. They're going to do it. I mean, that'll get ugly for recruits. You think you got a scholarship commitment as a junior in any of these sports? Better be real good.
Yeah.
Better be real good.
Yep. A lot of people are listening to this asking a question that I've gotten from virtually every parent I've talked to, which is, why are they doing this? Why is this part of the settlement? Why? And I think it's twofold. I tried to explain it in that story. Number one, I think Power Conference is one of the handcuffs off on the scholarship limitations. And so they just set a higher roster limitation, which really is just a higher scholarship limitation, just giving them the more ability to expand scholarships. But the second part of this, the second reason, is probably the real reason when you talk to folks, which is it's preempting or avoiding a lawsuit over restricting scholarships. Problem is that you're avoiding maybe a future lawsuit over scholarship restrictions, but your roster limitations are potentially going to lead to lawsuits. And certainly in this case, a legal objection. Several parents have gotten together with a law firm. I quoted the attorney in the story, who is going to file a legal objection to the settlement, to the House settlement. Now, the judge in the case has, for the most part, glossed over most of the objections so far. She doesn't seem to be moved at all by them. This one, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 roster spots cut seems a little different. And so you do wonder if the Power Conference and leagues and the leaders and the NCAA leaders will come to some agreement with plaintiff attorneys on potentially grandfathering in some of this. But
at some point, it's got to break, though. You can grandfather it in, but does that just mean you cut the recruiting?
Well, there was but thought that you have like a 2-year maybe or something ramp up.
Tamper it down and up.
Yeah. So there was that
tough.
thought.
All right. In football terms, what do we think the 105 scholarships will do? How many? What we've seen the last couple years is a lot of parity coming in, more parity, not full, obviously, but certainly amongst the top 40 or 50 schools. There's a bigger gap between Power 5 and Group of 5, but the Group of 5, a lot of the best of the Group of 5 have already been sopped up into there's more Power 5 teams too now, Power 4. So what we see is kids don't want to sit. They want to play. We're going to talk about Pitt, SMU, right? Eli Holstein didn't want to sit at Alabama. Took a red shirt. He could be the freshman right now. He could maybe be the starter next year. So excellent. He's a good quarterback. Instead, he took off for Pitt. He's at Pitt. He's starting. They're 7-0. Everything's going great. But if Alabama and Ohio State can now offer 20 more scholarships, the SEC, that's 320 more scholarships, right? Across the league. It's 380 in the, what is it? How many? No, 320 in the SEC and 360 in the Big Ten. So right there alone is 680. Am I getting this right? Whatever. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah, let's go with a lot. That's pod math right there.
No numbers here.
Does that hurt the Big 12, the ACC, and everybody else? Or are these schools just going to end up training, feeding, weightlifting freshmen and sophomore? Or they're going to bail and go anyway? Like they're going to use, it's like the back end of an Ohio State roster, an Alabama roster now. The final 10%, you're farm systeming somebody else the same way. If you're in the MAC or the Sun Belt, you're farm systeming up. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is this going to do?
No, it's a good question because that dynamic has changed dramatically over the years because, from the 1980s onward, what you heard was that the scholarship limitations, when they were dropping scholarships from, 100 to whatever to 85, that stopped Alabama and Nebraska and Oklahoma from stockpiling a gazillion players. But, as you said, now with the immediate transfer rules, how long are you stockpiling them for? You're stockpiling them for a year, and then they're going and starting somewhere else. We're going to talk about SMU, but SMU moved into the ACC and largely rebuilt their lines by getting transfers from power conference schools. So it's an interesting, fascinating kind of equation there. First of all, how much it's changed, but then secondly, do you want that many guys if you can't play them and then they're just going to leave anyway? I don't know what the resolution is going to be on that. The coaches, being coaches, were all like, this is a terrible rule because it's going to stop us from having the numbers that we want, this massive safety net of 50 extra players. But in reality, if you're not doing anything with them, are you just setting them up to leave anyway?
Coaches complain about everything.
Shockingly, yes, they do.
Something to keep in mind is I don't know that everybody, even in the SEC or Big Ten, right, will go up to 105 scholarships. I think that there will, I don't know what the average will be, but I've heard enough to know that I'm not so sure that everybody's going to do that, right? Go to 105, maybe they go to 95, or maybe they even go to 100. But something else to think about is the 115th player, let's say 110th player on these teams, who's obviously a walk-on, will no longer be there anymore. And can that 110th player at Alabama play and get a scholarship at Tulane?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, probably a bad example because Tulane's hard to get into, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you'd see, you may see, that total, Dan, average 30 walk-ons in football have to be cut around something like that. Then that's close to 1,700 football walk-ons in the power conference level that are going to be out there.
Are they
Right.
freshmen?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated how this plays out. Do you want? Okay, when you have 85 scholarship players, there is a lot of fighting for positioning, futures. It's hard to manage 85-man roster when everyone's looking. Am I going to get a chance? Who you bringing in? This or that. Now you have 105. How do you find playing time for 105 guys? You can't just be like, look, dude, you're the walk-on. The days of Tom Brady saying, I'm going to turn down Cal. I'm going to turn down Illinois. I'm going to turn down because I want to go to Michigan and be 7th string.
Well,
those days don't stick. Maybe that worked once, famously with one guy. But even then, it was like, why aren't you leaving? Now, forget it.
Basketball. I've heard this in basketball. I think
they don't even use their spots.
The new roster limit of basketball is 15. And it was 13 men's basketball.
15th guy on a team. When are you getting on the court?
Exactly. So and y'all do more basketball than I do, but I've heard from basketball coaches who have said, we don't want 15. We're going to stay at 13 and still have 2 walk-ons, or we're going to go to 12 or 11 and have 3 or 4 walk-ons because we can't give everybody enough playing time to keep that many scholarships.
Keep them happy. Arkansas was looking for players last spring. Like they were at like 8 or 9 at one point, and they're all NBA potential players. So you're like, hey, you want to come transfer? Like, why? I'm never playing.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not easy to get if you're at a certain team. Obviously it's still awesome, but you're not going to get like that many like mid-level dudes who just want to be like, hey, great, I back up 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, you can be an 8-minute-a-game guy maybe at Arkansas, or you can be a 20-minute-a-game guy at South Florida or something,
Maybe 8.
Yeah,
if
maybe
they're
5,
winning by
maybe
30.
3.
Yeah. I mean, it's certain ways this goes. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. The initial aspect would be more scholarships would be less competitive, but I don't know. Okay, that was Money Moves presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. We're going to talk more Pitt and SMU and how they built this roster right after this break. All right, a little bit of a continuation of what we're talking about. The big ACC game this week is one that no one expected. 7-0 Pitt against 6-1 SMU. Classic ACC tilt. Tobacco Road, if there ever was one. But we were talking about the transfer portal and how they built these rosters. And on the Kings of the North podcast, which I go on often with Doug Leigh-Murray's, we were talking about the odd advantage that you have by not having a great season or not being in the playoff when it comes to the transfer portal. And one of the things I always talked about with college football is that if you try to professionalize it too much without the draft order being set, without a draft, the worst teams can't get the best players, right? So if the beauty of the NFL is if you're New England or Jets, but the Jets are looking at a top 5 pick now again too. Carolina, you're playing and you got a chance to get a first round pick and get a good player in and rebuild your roster. So your lost season has something to play for, where in college football, if you're losing, it's very hard to get a good recruit because no one wants to go to a losing team. And the best players tend to go to the best teams. Now, here's the difference. And we saw it a little bit last year in the way it works out with this transfer portal basically hitting right after Thanksgiving, I think, is when it opens. If you're still in this playoff, how do you bring many players in, if almost any? And I know it was chaotic at Michigan last year, but and that played a role. But clearly their inability to get a quarterback changed this whole season for Michigan. If they have a decent quarterback, they have a decent team. They don't have a decent quarterback, so they're, struggling along. But they were 15-0 last year, and they may go 6-6 this year. Now, Ohio State, by losing the Michigan game, had no allegiance and no concerns about the rest of their year, and were able to go all in on the transfer portal right away, replace their quarterback, replace a bunch of different guys, add people, and all of that. So you almost have an advantage by not being in the playoff, because you can sit there and say, well, you could still work the portal. But if you have team chemistry and you're saying, hey, here's an offensive lineman that will start for us next year. Let's say you're whatever, Ohio State this year, and you're going into the playoff. Say, boy, if we can get this lineman, he's going to be great for us next year. We're going to take him right now in the portal. Well, two of your backup linemen are going to look and go, wait a minute, I'm going to get replaced, or I'm not going to get a chance to play. I got to leave. Or am I just disgruntled and I'm calling my dad and saying, this stinks. I'm going to get recruited over here. How do you keep your chemistry as you're trying to win a national title? And are you better off being like Pitt and SMU sitting there like last year going, man, we can just rehaul our whole thing because we don't have any worries. And I think, what was it? SMU brought in 21 guys and transfers, and Pitt brought in 14, including Holstein, which is a huge game changer for them, but other really good players. Is this the way that in an oddball, it's almost like the worst teams getting the better draft picks? Not as significant, clearly, but is this an advantage for the losers of the world out there? Pat, you know about being a loser in the world.
Thank you for that setup.
It's been too serious of a show. Sorry.
Right hook below the belt.
I already said I was
God.
Totally
God. Anyway, cheap shot aside, yes. I mean, this is a potential leveling of the playing field, right? I mean, where
maybe
there is some advantage, and not just, I mean, yeah, team chemistry, but I think we saw this with Michigan. When you have a legitimate chance to chase a national championship and you're in the chase all the way into mid-January, that's what you're focused on. You can try to think about the portal and do some looking ahead, but I mean, probably all you're going to do, especially now that there's more playoff games, is get ready for the next playoff game. As opposed to sitting out there saying, gosh, our 2026 class is looking slim, a defensive line, who are we going to get? So between having the time and even having the focus, yes, I think that this is an equalizer potentially. And maybe that's part of what we've seen of some of these schools, kind of moving up the ladder here. It's interesting, and I think it's going to be even more of a dynamic as we go into a longer, bigger playoff.
Yeah, I mean, some other programs like Miami come to mind too, right? Not involved in the championship race the last couple of years, not in the playoff, and able to focus on restocking, rebuilding the roster, getting good, really, really good players like the Cam Wards and all that. But this is one of the reasons why some out there want there to be one transfer portal window and for it to be in the spring and not happen around all of this other stuff. Coaching firings and hirings, playoff games, bowl games, all that stuff. They want it to move. And there was a thought this year that there would be one transfer portal window. The proposal was on the desk of the D1 Council, and it was going to be just for the fall. They were actually going to eliminate the spring portal, and they decided not to do that. They just shortened the windows. But there are a few people out there for sure that think in this may be one of the reasons is to just have it in the spring, because it's just a mess with all this going on at one time. You got the, like I mentioned earlier, the coaching, hiring, and firings. You have not just playoff and bowl games, but you have the signing day, right? You have normal signing day, that early signing day that falls in between, from Thanksgiving to, I guess the national championship game. It is a lot going on in college football, and there's a way, and there's more going on now than ever, and there continues to be more because now there's more playoff games, and there continues to be talk from leaders on decluttering it, as some have put it, but we haven't seen it yet.
Well, moving signing day is the obvious one. It's easy.
The
1st.
pod, we figured, look, we've stumped this whole thing out for years.
Yeah.
Nobody will listen.
If a
Pod has figured
kid
it out.
wants to enroll early, let
Yeah.
him enroll early. We don't have a national letter of intent anymore, mercifully. Just do it in March. Let the players and understand what they're walking into with coaching retirements and movement and all of that. Then you'll have less transferring because they all get, there's 2,000 guys in the portal. Like, is that bad? Is that good? I don't know. But I don't know how you do this. I said Miami's a perfect example. How active can you be if you think you can win the national title?
Right.
Because the chemistry part and the backups and all of that, there's just no other sport where you just, the World Series is going on. You think the Yankees are going to sign a new center fielder for next year? Like, I mean, like, wait, what's going on here? Right? Like, it's just, you don't rattle your team. We're the brothers. We got to do this. I don't know. This is going to be very, very interesting. They got to, I have a feeling but it's hard because then you got to make a kid go to school in the spring semester. Then they want that time to get him in the culture, get him with our weight coach. Something to be said though, because I think that you could see a lot more seasons where you have a great season and then you're caught flat-footed.
Sure.
So I think we said all along, it's not that Michigan, they're the most extreme example, but it's not like Washington's killing it. They lost their coach, and even Alabama's been struggling a little bit. I mean, Ohio State's
3 of the 4 playoff teams from last year are nowhere near the playoff right now. Alabama maybe still has a chance.
Alabama can make it, but it's not. And so you sit there and go, what's this? But like if Michigan, you say, they should have, were they going to get Cam Ward? No, but they got Curtis Rourke to go there instead of Indiana. Right? If they said, we picked up the Ohio QB, no one would have blinked. We beat Indiana for them. Yeah, Michigan's probably like, 6-1 or something, 7-1 right now. So that's and it'd be a hell of a game in Ann Arbor Saturday against Oregon. Instead, it's like, I don't know. So this is it's something to watch. All right, People's Court.
There we go.
People's Court. Pat can rule against me for my vicious attack.
I think I will. Whatever the hell you decide, I'm going the other way.
I should have made it more. I'm the loser. I already kind of beat myself down though, I'm winning in Race for the Case, so I guess you're right.
I had to bring that up. I
feel bad for Pat. Pat, are your feelings okay? Are you okay?
No.
That was mean.
I may quit the pod after this. I may be done. This may be it. I'm very tender and sensitive, I'm
going to give you a James Franklin apology. I didn't handle that well.
There you go.
I know I need to be better. You have a job.
When we're out on the town in State College this weekend, Pat, Dan can Venmo you.
There you go.
Beer.
Don't try to sneak in on the benefit of this. See what you're doing. By the way, I did Venmo Joe. Joe, why don't you get your mic on here?
What actually happened?
Joe and Sean Anderson, our old producer, former producer, and Joe, our current producer, Joe De Leon, went to homecoming at URI where they both played football, but they stopped at a Narragansett. Where were you? Applebee's?
We were at an Applebee's, but
all the good food in Rhode Island, and you went to the Applebee's in Narragansett?
Applebee's is like, for some reason, for the Rhode Island students, has like some significance. A lot of people go there, mostly because it's just drunk college kids wanting to get the $1 drinks. We mostly went because we wanted to see how many of those stupid boneless wings we could eat.
Okay.
Which you helped support.
And how many did you each eat?
We each ate 60.
60 boneless wings each.
What?
So there was no winner? Nobody ate more?
We set an hour time limit. Yeah, we tied, but Sean was complaining. Sean at the end of this was like, I feel so full. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this or not. He's 100 pounds, 150 pounds heavier than I am. So I like to claim victory here.
Kobayashi? You're the Kobayashi of producers.
Exactly.
60 bone. Was there a moment of discomfort?
No, I felt great.
Really?
After that. The next morning was a little rough. I didn't drink or anything that night, and I felt hungover the next day, which was the first.
Buffalo sauce.
Oh my God!
Just from all the fried food, probably.
But Look, a college football game can no longer end in a tie, and you guys let this end in a tie.
It's a good point.
Upset.
We should have kept
Lame.
charging.
Real brotherhood, though.
We spent $170 on these things, so I don't think we need to buy anymore.
I gave you
large amount.
$100, I think.
It's like $1 a wing. It's like $1.20 a wing or something.
Is there first?
like
Let's
$10 an order.
Okay, let's set the record. It's not a wing; it's a compressed bit of chicken matter. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Good point. We've ruled on this.
Yeah, we have. We have.
Don't bring your boneless chicken wing thing to I think the Ohio Supreme Court also.
It's a nugget.
Yeah,
Didn't we say it's a nugget?
right.
It's a chicken nugget.
It's a sauced up nugget.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations. 60.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Good
supporting our stupidity as well.
Yeah, clearly. I'd rather Venmo those two than you two. I can tell you that.
I will say,
Pat and I
the
are
pod
not eating
supports all
60
stupidity
wings
like that.
in
No,
State
we're
College,
not.
so.
We're not.
No.
We're
All right.
definitely
Well,
not.
People's Court here it also involves food and ordering. German police busted a pizzeria in Dusseldorf. Anybody been to
It's the name of a
Dusseldorf?
town? Dusseldorf?
It's a fairly famous city, yes.
Yeah, pretty
There's
big
no
city.
LSU recruits from there, but yeah, it's a fairly big. Never heard of Dusseldorf?
No. I'm
Okay.
Googling
They got
it,
their
though.
own mustard, I think.
Oh, well, I should know.
Dusseldorf
How do I not know Dusseldorf mustard? Where have I been?
Also, like
these
World War
years.
II.
Yeah, you know. all that
That's
shit.
okay. Anyway,
All right, moving on.
moving on. You'll like the rest. I think you'll follow on the rest of it. If you ordered number 40 on the menu, you got a pizza with a side order of cocaine.
Oh,
What?
Yes,
Is it a pizzeria? I mean, obviously, I guess. Yeah.
the pizzeria. You got so the guy, the restaurant manager, was running a drug emporium disguised as a pizza shop. The police said, not surprising, pizza number 40 was one of the best-selling pizzas.
Yeah. What is a 40? Do we know?
Let me see. I got to get through that. The manager got busted. He went to detention for a few days, got out, opened the business, started doing it again.
Wow.
And it gave the investigators a chance to look through the supply chain. They got some more guys. They did not say how much they charged. I don't know. It doesn't say what kind of pizza. What is this? I got to look up more info.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Let's make this the debate. What should the order be if you want cocaine? Like what kind of you can't just be pepperoni because like innocent people are going to be ordering it, right?
Yeah. So it's got to be a little exotic. But God, this is Germany. Do they have any idea how to make good pizza in Germany?
Well,
do we know?
The Italians move over there, so
Yeah, it's not far.
Good at,
So okay. But so we're looking some form of spicy meat, but then you got to have some other obscure toppings. You know, whether it's like
something
mushrooms
gross.
or
Yeah.
mushroom, banana pepper.
little,
I mean, if you want gross, you go anchovy, but it's no matter what
have
it
a little
is.
pineapple on there. Have a little pineapple.
Pineapple.
Maybe pineapple. Yeah, doesn't.
Can
doesn't
you get
say.
a pineapple in Germany? I guess you can.
I'm looking at a bunch
Be a
of
little
different
expensive.
places listed on the menu. Cocaine pizza. A lot of stories about this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
some are saying you get cocaine as a topping. I don't think that's it.
Instead of cheese.
I mean, if you want cocaine, I think I'd probably rather have it in another form than mixed into the mozzarella. But
Yeah, true.
Sorry, I could have done more research, but I didn't. But yeah,
Dan
I
would
don't
say
know.
So I'm
mozzarella.
like you.
Mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
Mozzarella. Anyway, careful of. 40 types of pizza.
Yeah,
Pretty
that's
good.
a lot of pizza.
Yeah, there's probably some innocent people got that order.
Those poor
Do
people.
you get does the waiter just come up and drop a little baggie next, or is it under
It was
the
to go.
crust?
It was to go.
It's to go. Okay, it's to go.
So
All
it's
right,
in the
so
box,
it's in the
the
box.
guy-
You don't
in the
want
box?
junkies hanging around your pizza shop, man.
Not really.
No.
You got
I don't know.
so you get your pizza
Anyway.
on the side. You get your Parmesan and your crushed red pepper and maybe a pepperoncini and some blow. There you go.
Perfect.
Awesome.
What a combo. That'll make your night.
That'll do it. That'll do it for this pod. I don't know what happened.
It's a good way to end it.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We had high hopes for it. We had high hopes for it. Please continue to subscribe. Seriously, this could be our last episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching and listening. Thanks again to Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. We will talk to you Thursday.